What if the biggest obstacle in your career isn't the economy, isn't your resume, or even your performance, but your boss? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on one of the biggest threats to your professional growth, the incompetent leader. They're more common than you think and harder to spot than you'd like to believe. Let's get into it. In our last video, we talked about how to recognize a toxic boss. You know, the ones who poison the work culture. But what happens when the danger isn't their personality? It's their lack of ability. This video is a part of a series. And trust me, you'll want to stick around until the end because we're unpacking the key signs that your boss might be in way over their head. Sign number one, they lack clear direction. They don't know where they're going and they're taking you with them. Have you ever been with somebody? You're in a car driving somewhere and they're lost, but they won't admit they're lost and they're trying to act like they are not lost, but you know they're lost and they know they're lost. That's how it is when you have a boss that has unclear goals, shifting priorities, or vague strategies. An incompetent boss lacks vision. Next, micromanagement. This is not leadership, it's control masquerading as competence. They don't trust your work, your judgment, your autonomy. They're checking every detail and asking for updates constantly. A confident, skilled leader empowers their team. An insecure one hovers like a storm cloud. And I talked about the three things that are always present with toxic leaders. They're incompetent, they're immature, and or they're insecure. Now, they may not have all three, but those characteristics are present when you're talking about toxic leader. Prior to retirement and during the pandemic, I was working remotely for a large state agency as an office manager. As you could imagine, we had to do things differently. We had to move differently. My weekly meetings that I held with my management team, we had to do those remotely. Communication was very important. So whenever I had any type of meeting or anything going on my calendar where I would not be available, I would let my manager know as a courtesy. I would send her my meeting invite and put on the meeting invite, this is for informational purposes only, just keeping you in the loop that I'll be having a management team meeting with my staff at this time on this date. The other reason is we had a limited number of conference call lines. So I would let her know what line I was using for my meeting. And the lines all had the same login. I would sign onto the conference call early, open the conference call, and wait for them. I hear that somebody had signed in. So I said, hey, who signed in? No one answered. One by one, my management team began to sign in, and all of them were there, all three of them. And so four would have been me. But the line is telling me there's five people on the call. We do roll call, and each person sounds off. Finally, I said, okay, the system is saying there's five people signed in on this conference call. Is there anybody else there? My manager says, it's me. She says her name. I'm here. Keep in mind, she's been on the call this whole time. I've been asking who's on the call, who's on the call. She was like, well, I just signed in just in case your managers had any questions. And I said, if we have any questions that I can't answer, I'll be happy to bring that up to you and we can discuss it at that time. She stayed there for a little bit. And then finally, she said, okay, I'll talk to you later at our meeting. But that's an example of straight micromanagement. And yes, I was a manager and I dealt with incompetent boss and micromanagement and some other stuff. Another sign that you're dealing with an incompetent manager is they're always too busy. If you've ever tried to get time with your boss and you're just ghosted or you're always rescheduled, what you'll find is that incompetent bosses, number one, they can't usually manage their time. Well, you can't manage your time, but you can manage the activities that you have in time. But incompetent bosses, they always hide behind their calendar. They can't talk to you one-on-one because keep in mind, when they're incompetent and toxic, they got to be in the center stage. So a lot of their stuff they want to do in front of people. They're either overwhelmed or avoiding tough conversations altogether. Good leaders make time. Great ones prioritize their people. And I'll be talking about leadership skills in another video. Incompetent managers focus on the negative. If your boss only shows up when something goes wrong. And I talked about that in a prior video. That's not leadership. That's damage control. These managers believe criticism is more productive than encouragement. And let me just tell you something, it's not. When people are never recognized for their wins, motivation and morale simply plummet. And what incompetent managers don't understand or ignore is that when you are being negative, that's saying more about your leadership than it is about the person who you are supposed to be leading. Number five, they react with punishment and not coaching. Incompetent leaders think fear is a motivational tool. And let me be clear, it can be. But I have always felt, and I was trained and taught when I went to school for my master's in leadership, that your job as a leader is to garner commitment, not compliance. And you can't force somebody to be committed to you. You can only inspire them to be committed to you, the greater goal of the organization, and serving their people. What incompetent leaders do when they rely on punishment as a motivational tool is they are trying to get compliance. And that's totally different than commitment. If you're consistently worried about getting into trouble instead of doing your best, that's a problem because real leadership builds confidence, not anxiety. When mistakes are met with punishment instead of learning, you can bet innovation will not last. Why? Because people don't want to take chances that mistake that's going to cost them a promotion, cost them a good appraisal review, cost them whatever. Six, they don't listen or communicate well. And this goes back to what I said earlier. Ever sit in a meeting and wonder, what did they just say? Or offer feedback and feel ignored? Poor communication is a surefire sign of incompetence. Great leaders listen more than they speak. Great leaders listen before they speak. And when they speak with clarity. If you're always playing the guessing game, the issue isn't you, it's them. What I have found with incompetent leaders is they do a lot of talking. They like to hear themselves speak. Again, they like to be the center of attention. That's just what it is. It goes along with the next one. They're all about themselves. These bosses treat leadership like a personal brand campaign. It's all about them, their career, their image, their next promotion. Your development, hey, that's an afterthought, and only if it's going to help them. Incompetent leaders, they hoard credit and dodge blame. We talked about how toxic leaders, they don't take accountability and they steal the credit that you deserve. Real leadership means lifting others up and not standing on their shoulders. One of the things that I used to say is, you guys work the stage, speaking about my managers, and I'll work the light. What can I do? How can I support you? Was I a perfect leader? I was not. Was I a supportive leader? I was. I believe in servant leadership, and I will talk about leadership in the leadership series that I'll be doing later on in the year. Number eight, they cannot handle their own workload. If your boss is constantly overwhelmed, dropping balls, or missing deadlines, not just poor time management, it is poor leadership. Delegating badly, assigning tasks at the last minute, or making rush decisions is often a sign they're simply not equipped for the job that they hold. One leader I had didn't want to delegate, and that's a leadership skill that is very important. Why? Because when you are the leader, you have a team. And some leaders who are insecure, they compete with their team. And I remember going to a conference with John Maxwell where he said that your team is not there to compete with you. Your team is there to complete you. Many ineffective, incompetent, and toxic leaders, they didn't get that memo. And if they did get that memo, they're ignoring it. They don't understand it. That your team is there to help you, to support you. Incompetent leaders, insecure ones who they don't want to delegate anything. They want to keep everything to themselves. But because they keep everything to themselves, they can never get things done. Plus, they're micromanaging you and others. So they're always trying to grasp the balls, and so they'll drop something on your lap at the last minute that has to be done and was due yesterday. Incompetence is very expensive in terms of financial resources and time. If you have a person who's always behind, always dropping the ball, and always reassigning things at the last minute, that's stressful for the people who have to work with and support that leader. 9, here's the one that seals the deal. They can't take feedback. They get defensive, dismiss suggestions, or shut down conversations. Incompetent bosses confuse authority with infallibility, but the best leaders are learners, always adapting and improving. One time, I had one of the managers that reported to me tell me, when I'm talking to you or we're having a conversation, I would appreciate it if you would look at me rather than type on the computer. Now, I could have taken that and been pissed off about it, but I wasn't. I was not. I was multitasking, and she wanted my attention. And I understood that. So it was how she needed me to communicate with her. That feedback was very helpful because other people might have felt the same way and just did not tell me, right? So you can always learn from people. Now, here's the twist. Not all managers are malicious. Some are just immature. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about in the next episode, how to identify an immature boss. Trust me, it's a whole different beast, but just as important to understand. You deserve better leadership and the tools to recognize it. Thank you so much for watching and have an amazing day. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.